Welcome back to another episode of With a Grain of Salt. I'm your host, Isaiah Salter, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in for yet another week. If you are watching, you can obviously see that I'm in a different scenery than normal, than the studio, but with me transitioning and moving in a couple of days, I'm just playing around with different, ways to shoot and different scenery ideas and things of that nature. So yeah, right now we're outside, got the nice pond behind us. Nice little breeze. So it's going to be a good episode. This week's viewer shout out is my boy CJ, because I'm currently with him right now and he's the GOAT. He's the one that set up this shot. So this beautiful scenic view is a result of CJ. So shout out to my man CJ. But this week's episode is going to be on the power of what's in your hands. The power of what's in your hands. This really was something that was heavy on my mind the last couple of days, because on our journey, we're going to constantly, have to go through different things, navigate different things, feel different things, have different thoughts, have different experiences and things of that nature. And there's a lot of things that we can't control. But a lot of the reason a lot of people have a lot of stress and anxiety and frustration on their journey is because we give so much power and energy to the things that we have no control over, right? And so this episode is really going to be on focusing on the things that we do have control over, because that's how you take your power back. And that's how you start to live more intentionally, more aligned, and more authentically. So let's get into it. Point number 1, focus on your response, not the event. You can't always control what happens to you, whether it's how someone treats you, a challenge that shows up out of nowhere, or a door that unexpectedly closes. But what you can control is how you choose to respond. The response shapes your experience more than the event itself. The response shapes your experience more than the event itself. Absolutely. So often we give so much of our power away to the things that happen to us, right? And we don't realize that what's really shaping us is the fact that when things happen to us, we're so quick to give our power away, rather than understanding that things are going to happen that are out of my control. So how can I respond in a way that's aligned, that's congruent with the highest version of myself, so that I can grow through this situation and not, become a victim or become held down by this situation, right? And that's how you take your power back. It says emotional maturity is about recognizing your emotions without letting them dictate your decisions. It's stepping into the gap between feeling and reacting. Stepping into the gap between feeling and reacting, right? A lot of people think emotional mastery is about controlling what you feel, controlling what emotions come up. But it's not necessarily about controlling your emotions. It's about being able to navigate and respond in a way that your emotions don't get the best of you anymore, right? And it's about creating space between the feeling and the response, right? In that space, that is where your power lies, right? You feel something happens and you feel that emotional reaction, right? But before you just are quick to act out of that, we're going to take a deep breath, take a pause, and we're going to feel what we're feeling. We're going to pause and reflect, and then make an aligned response, right? We're going to make an aligned response. And that right there can shift everything. That is what emotional maturity, emotional regulation is about. Learning how to feel what you're feeling, but not allow those feelings to cloud your vision and take over the steering wheel and make you say or do something that, you look back and wish you didn't do or wish you didn't say, right? It says by mastering your response, you take your power back. You stop being a victim of circumstances and you start becoming a conscious creator of your reality, right? That's what so much of this journey is about. When you want to start creating, a reality in your life that's really aligned with who you are and the type of life that you want to live, it's going to come from learning how to master your responses to the things that happen to you. That is where so much of your creative power comes from, right? When you really, really learn how to, go through different situations, go through tough circumstances, but respond in a way that's aligned and authentic to who you are, that's where you'll really start to see, growth and transformation in your life and start to really evolve into the best version of yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, right? Like we said earlier, in that space between feeling and response, stimulus and response, experience, situation and response, there's some space. And if we can start to bring attention and intention into that space, you can start living in a more aligned, authentic way. A practice that you can use to help with point number 1. The next time you're triggered, Pause and breathe before responding. Even a 5-second gap can shift the entire energy of the moment. So true. So true. And I realize this with myself with so many different things. Whether it's anxiety, stress, a certain urge, right? Being able to, feel that emotion and then just take a deep breath, 5 to 10 seconds. Just take a deep breath or a couple of deep breaths and then really analyze the situation and then make an aligned response. That has changed my life, truly. Because before I used to be for lack of a better term, a slave to my emotions. So I would feel something and I would immediately react out of that feeling, right? And if we're not careful and we're not aware of that and we don't start to shift away from that, we can really, really be brought down a very, very, very limited path by allowing our emotions to constantly dictate what we do, how we act, how we show up. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. Point number 2, master your inner dialogue. Master your inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself is often louder than the way anyone else does. Your internal voice becomes the lens through which you see everything. That's why it's crucial to be intentional about your self-talk, because it's either empowering you or silently defeating you. You have to be incredibly intentional with your self-talk because it's either empowering you or silently defeating you, right? So many people don't realize that they're their biggest enemy, right? We're so quick to point the finger and look at all of the things outside of ourselves as the problem, but we don't realize that so much of our issues, so much of our blockages and hindrances come from things that we have going on within ourselves, the self-talk, right? The emotional irregulation, all of these little things, the thoughts that we allow to get so much of our energy. Those are the things that truly, truly block you from being the best version of yourself, right? And if you're not mindful and aware of that, then you'll constantly be looking at all of these other things that you think are the problem that really aren't, and you're going to be giving those things so much energy and not ever really getting to the root of what's really going on within yourself, right? So it's about being very mindful of the self-talk and the self-dialogue. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not about always being perfect with self-talk. It's about becoming aware of the self-talk, right? So now that you can start to act accordingly when certain things arise within yourself, right? You can start to navigate it in a healthier way. Something comes up, a thought comes up that isn't really aligned, rather than fixating on that thought and feeling like you're doing something wrong because you have that thought. How can we become aware of that thought and then bring intention into that moment and add a new thought that we want to give energy to that's more aligned? That right there, my friends, my brothers and sisters, is how you take your power back. It says negative thoughts might come up automatically, but you don't have to agree with them. You get to challenge and reframe them, right? I think a lot of people struggle with this idea of, growing and shifting your thoughts into a more positive light because they feel like when they go on that journey that they should never have negative thoughts. The goal is not to never have negative thoughts. The goal is to learn how to respond to those negative thoughts in a healthier way. And one of the best ways you can do that is to not accept them, to challenge them every time they come up, and to learn how to reframe them, right? That is one of the best ways that you can learn how to navigate when those, unhealthy or limited thoughts come up, right? It's not about getting rid of them completely. You are a human being. You are going to go through so many different seasons and so many different ebbs and flows in life. There's going to be times where you're struggling in certain areas, you're going through a really, really tough season, and certain thoughts are arising, that are limited, that are, a little bit more negative, right? It's natural. The goal is to learn how to respond to those moments in a healthier and aligned way. It's not necessarily to get rid of those things as a whole, right? And I think so many people latch on to the idea of wanting to get rid of things rather than understanding, no, it's not about getting rid of things. It's about learning how to respond to them differently, right? And that's where your power comes back, because then you start to see the value in these things, right? These things that you were so quick to want to get rid of. You start to see the value in them when you start to respond to them in a different way. And that right there is a game changer. So now it's like, no, I'm actually grateful that I go through the tough seasons and sometimes I have limiting thoughts or, emotions or whatever it may be, because in those moments, those are opportunities for me to work on the things that I've been practicing on, right? My emotional regulation, right? My positive self-talk, my reframing, right? My challenging the things that don't align. It's a beautiful thing. Perspective, my brothers and sisters, perspective. It says changing your inner dialogue isn't about lying to yourself. It's about choosing thoughts that move you forward, not hold you back, right? Inner dialogue is not about lying to yourself. It's not about constantly saying things that just aren't true. No, it's about choosing thoughts, that truly push you forward and align with the highest version of yourself, that align with the vision that you have in your heart and your mind of the person that you want to become, right? Marianne Williamson says, you must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. A lot of people try to be a new type of person or do different things, but they never change their internal state. They never change their internal emotional state. They never change their internal self-talk, right? And if you allow those things to just linger, which is the root cause of how we express ourselves externally, and you just constantly try to change the external things, you're always going to fall back into the default of what you have going on within yourself, right? That's a very loud siren. I don't know if y'all can hear that. It is a very loud siren. I was trying to talk through it, but I'm like, hold on, bro. Anyway, a practice that can help with this point is start each morning by writing down 3 empowering thoughts you want to believe about yourself. Say them out loud and speak life into your mind, right? Start the day with empowering self-talk. I am worthy. I am enough. I am divine, right? I am beautiful. These type of things. Start your day off with those things, right? And keep showing up for yourself through the times where maybe internally you're struggling and it's not really hitting, but just keep on showing up for you, because so much of the journey is about constantly showing up for yourself, right? Through the ebbs and flows of life. So point number 3, energy management over time management. I like this one. Energy management over time management. You can have a full schedule and still feel depleted. Why? Because it's not just about managing your time. It's about managing your energy. What drains you? What restores you? The more intentional you are about where your energy flows, the more life starts to flow in return, right? When a lot of people think about this idea of balance, right? Finding balance in their life, they think about time, right? They think about balancing, giving time to certain things, right? But it's not about necessarily giving more time to certain things or less time to certain things. It's about learning how to manage your energy in a healthier way, right? Because, prime example, let's say I was in a relationship with somebody and we were spending time together, right? And let's say she came over my house and we're watching Netflix, but the whole time, the 2 hours she's there, I'm on my phone and she's on her phone, and we just got, Netflix playing in the back. No communication, no anything, right? And then we go about our business. There was no real connection there. There was no real, congruency there, right? Versus, let's say she came over, I cooked a nice meal, and we sat down and we had, a 30 to 45 minute dinner, and we had a really, really in-depth conversation, deep, and we connected. We were listening with each other. We were communicating. And then she left, right? In that 45 minutes, we got way more connection than we did in that 2 hours of just sitting there doing nothing, right? And so it's not necessarily about giving more time to certain things. It's about learning how to give the right energy to the right things, right? It says, protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's essential. You can't give from an empty tank. You cannot give from an empty tank. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It's essential. A lot of people think of, self-love and taking space for yourself and giving yourself energy and guarding your heart as selfish, right? But it's not selfish. It's essential. It is essential to you becoming the best version of yourself, to you being able to live intentionally and aligned and authentically, right? To live in a healthy and congruent way. It is essential, right? And so often we allow the societal, depiction of, what selfish is to get in the way of us taking space for ourselves, right? We think taking space for ourselves is selfish when it's literally essential. If you don't protect your energy, if you don't guard your heart, if you don't take time for you, you're going to feel depleted and you're going to be trying to pour into other people from an empty cup. And that's why the relationships, the connections, the opportunities, they'll never feel like truly aligned or as expansive as they could be, because you're trying to show up in these things or with these people from an empty cup. And that is a very, very tough thing to do, right? And I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in people very, very close to me, where you're constantly just depleting your energy, constantly trying to pour into other people's cups and never taking space for you. Because for some reason, along our journey, we were told that taking space for ourselves is selfish. But let me tell you something, that is easily one of the greatest deceptions of our society, because the fact that so many people just deplete themselves because they think giving space to themselves is selfish, is where so much of the anxiety and stress and emotional irregulation comes from. That stuff just compounds over time if you're not giving yourself that space and that energy, right? It says high energy doesn't mean being loud or busy. It means being clear, calm, and aligned, right? That hits. Where your attention goes, energy flows. Tony Robbins. Where your attention goes, energy flows. Be very mindful of the things you are giving focus to, because that is what you're giving energy to. So if you are always focusing and giving your attention to everybody else outside of yourself, that is where all of your energy is going, right? So now when you are alone, you're not going to have any energy for yourself, right? You're going to feel depleted. You're going to feel empty, right? And that is a very, very uncomfortable thing to feel on an everyday basis. And some people go years and years and years, sometimes their whole life like that, right? So really be mindful of that and start to take those small incremental steps to giving yourself more space, energy, and time. Point number 4, let go of the outcome. We often attach our peace and worth to results that we can't control, whether it's how someone receives us, the success of a project, or the timing of our goals. Fixating on outcomes creates anxiety. The truth is, you can do everything right and still not get the outcome you imagined, and that is okay. Whew. When you get emotionally attached to outcomes, that is a prerequisite for anxiety. Listen, the outcome is not in your hands. The process is, right? And so often in our life, we place our peace, our worth, our value in an outcome, right? When in actuality, the peace, the value, the worth is in the journey. It's in the process, in this moment, right? Whether something goes your way or doesn't go your way or whatever it may be, if you show up to the best of your ability, right? You apply yourself to the process and you do the best you can for that day, and you do that over, a consistent period of time, the results will take care of themselves, right? And you'll be at peace knowing that, okay, maybe this thing didn't go my way, but I know I did everything I could, right? And I'm not emotionally attached to the result. So when it doesn't go my way, I'm going to be okay with it because I know I did everything I could do. And that's so much of the journey, is understanding that no, we can't always control the outcome, but we can control the process, right? But in our journey, in our society, we fixate on outcomes because that's where our worth is. That's where our peace is. I won't be worthy. I won't be valued. I won't be at peace until this thing happens, until I get this thing, until I achieve this thing, right? And it's a very, very tough way to live because you're constantly going to be chasing after these outcomes to fill that void of self-worth and value within yourself that can only come really from being present and embracing where you are and making the most out of this moment. It says, detaching from the outcome frees you to be fully present in the process. You're no longer driven by fear, you're driven by purpose. Right? When you detach from the outcome, you're no longer driven by fear and you're driven by purpose. Purpose is found in this moment, right? When you're driven by fear, it's because you're fixating on an outcome, right? So you're moving in a way where you're like, I gotta do that, I gotta, nah, just be here. Make the most out of what you have right now and trust that that is enough because it is, right? Make the most out of what you have in this moment and trust that that is enough because it is. I promise you, if you just keep on showing up every single day and doing the best you can for that day, taking intentional and aligned steps, everything else will take care of itself. I guarantee it. Everything else will take care of itself. It says, fulfillment doesn't come from what you achieve. It comes from who you become while you're showing up. Fulfillment does not come from what you achieve. It comes from who you become on the journey. When you're really, really striving to be the best version of yourself, right? Every single day, you're moving aligned, you're moving intentionally, right? You're trying your best to be present. You're showing up in a way that's congruent with the highest version of yourself. That is where fulfillment is found. That's where the service comes from. That's where the connection comes from, right? That's where the freedom and the peace comes from, right? Rather than, like we said, fixating on this outcome or putting your value or your worth on the opposite end of getting something, right? And so now you'll never feel fulfilled until that thing happens. And then even when that thing happens, you still won't feel fulfilled because you'll think you'll need to get more. And I've seen that happen so many times in my life and other people's. A practice for this one says, at the end of each day, reflect on how you showed up. Did you give effort? Did you stay true to yourself? Celebrate the process, not just the results, right? One of the best practices you can do is at the end of each day, just reflect on how you showed up, how you stayed true to yourself, the steps that you took, and celebrate those things, right? Really, really analyze, the last 24 hours of your day and see, you know, where your energy was going and the steps that you take and the areas where maybe you need to focus more energy on tomorrow. Different things like that. Just reflect on the day, and then when you wake up tomorrow, make the most out of that day. Make the most out of that day. But so often what takes us away from being able to do that is because we're so fixated on a future outcome. So fixated on a future outcome that we're not even able to reflect on the beautiful steps that we've taken in this moment. Point number 5, choose who gets access. It says you might not control how people show up, but you do control how close you allow them to get. Your mental, emotional, and spiritual space is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it, right? You need to be incredibly intentional with who gets access into your space, into your energy, right? You have to understand that your energy is sacred. And it's not hateful. It's not mean to prioritize, you know, making sure that the right people are getting access to you. No, that's just being intentional. That's being aligned. Not everybody in this life deserves access into your life. And that's okay. It's not that they're better or worse. They're just different. That is all, right? And you have to be incredibly mindful with understanding who you are, what aligns with you and what doesn't, and then making sure that the people who are getting access into your life are congruent with the energy that you've cultivated within yourself. Because, and I've seen this from my own life growing up a people pleaser, if you allow any and everyone into your space, yo, it's tough. It's very tough. It's very tough. And it's tough because I was a people pleaser, I would never have those boundaries. I would never, you know, really be mindful of who's getting access. I would kind of just open myself up to everybody because I thought that's what somebody who is positive and happy and nice would do. But all that does is that really is a form of self-neglect. Really, it is. It is a form of self-neglect because people will 100% take advantage of your energy. People will come in and walk over you. You have to understand that not everybody values you the way you're meant to be valued, you know, and you have to be incredibly intentional with who gets access into your life and who gets access into your energy because it is sacred, right? And you are an incredibly, incredibly valuable human being. So protect your heart, right? My mom says it all the time. Above all else, son, guard your heart. So it says boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They protect your peace without cutting off your love. It says boundaries aren't walls. They're filters, right? A lot of people, when they have this idea of boundaries, they put walls up, right? So it blocks out people, but it also blocks themselves from expressing love in the way that they're meant to. It's not about building walls. It's about having filters, right? Allowing a divine filter to come through your life so that the right people come in and the ones that aren't aligned, it ain't there. You know what I mean? It ain't there. And that is okay. They protect your peace without cutting off your love. They protect your peace without cutting off your love. A lot of people, when they put boundaries up, they turn into walls and they cut off their own love. It's about protecting your peace, not cutting off your love. Protect your peace, protect your energy while still being truly who you are. It says you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce, right? And this one really hits with me because I've realized so many times where I've been in relationships or friendships with people and, you know, I've allowed certain things that I knew deep down really I did not like. I've, you know, held back my tongue to keep the peace. I've taken a step back from reinforcing certain things because I didn't want to create any rigidity in the relationship. And all that leads to is me getting hurt in the end. And here's the crazy thing, right? When you're not aware that that's what you're doing and then somebody hurts you, you think that it's their fault, right? You become resentful or hateful towards them, or you look at them like they were the issue. They were the reason that hurt you. But, you know, when you reach a certain level of awareness, right? And this is real, you know, accountability and responsibility for your life. You realize that, no, the reason that they did that is because consciously or unconsciously, I taught them that was okay for them to do to me. That's what I did, right? And I realized that so many times when I was hurt by somebody or somebody, you know, kind of took advantage of me, I really had to reflect on how I was showing up in that. And I realized there was a lot of times I was holding my tongue. I wasn't saying what, you know, I really felt. I wasn't, you know, standing on my principles. And that's what allowed, you know, that's what led to that situation happening, right? Yeah, I'm not saying that they should have did that to you, to me, to anybody, but your power comes from being able to see how what you were doing led to that happening, right? So that now you can start to move in a more intentional and aligned way rather than, fixating on what a person did, focusing on them being the problem, and then you never take any space to get clear on you. So now the next relationship you go into, you're doing the same exact things, right? Nah, we can't do that. Can't do that. It says you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. So many people think they have to neglect themselves, demean themselves in order to keep a relationship, to keep a connection, to make somebody else feel good, to keep the peace. Any relationship that you're in that makes you feel like you have to neglect yourself to keep the peace or to keep the relationship, that is not a healthy relationship. That is not an aligned relationship, right? And you need to be able to see that, right, with awareness and then act accordingly, understanding that this is not what a healthy relationship should feel like. I should not have to neglect myself. I should not have to betray myself in order to keep a relationship. No, that should never be the case in healthy and aligned relationships, in relationships in your life, to where you have to, you feel like you have to neglect who you are in order to keep the relationship. Those are not the relationships you want to be in. And if you constantly live your life that way, getting in relationships with people who aren't aligned and then doing things that aren't true to you or neglecting yourself as a whole in order to keep the relationships, that is literally a recipe to be incredibly unhappy, incredibly miserable, and cultivate very, very unhealthy attachments in relationships in your life. So just be very mindful of that, right? It says, as a practice, do a circle audit. Look at the people you regularly interact with. Ask, does this relationship drain or restore me? Then take one small step to protect your peace, whether that's more distance, a tough conversation, or new boundaries. And this one really hits because I have to do this with somebody in my life, currently. Like, I had to take a step back. I had to analyze the relationship. And, now, we have to have a tough conversation because I realized there was just some things that I was kind of just sweeping under the rug a little bit. And I've seen how in my past, if you sweep things under the rug, they don't disappear. They just linger, right? And they're waiting for that one situation to just come back up and resurface. So use that as a practice. And point number 6, the last point, return to the present moment. So much of our suffering comes from mentally living in places we can't touch, the past or the future. The present is the only moment where you can actually take action, feel peace, and make change. The more you anchor into now, the more clarity and calm you'll experience. It says so much of our suffering comes from mentally living in places we can't touch, right? How true is that? We suffer more in our imagination than reality, right? Because constantly, mentally, we're living in places that we can't even touch, that don't even exist right now in this moment, right? And so the more you anchor in now, the more clarity and calm you'll experience, right? And I know it's very tough in the society we live in to learn how to be present, but with intention and awareness, you can absolutely do it. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a process. You're not always going to be perfect. You are sometimes going to fall out of the present moment, but with awareness and intention, you can always bring yourself back. And the more you do something, the better you get, the stronger you get, right? The more you go to the gym, the stronger you get. So it's the same with being present. The more you constantly, become aware of the times where you're not present and then bring yourself back with intention to the present, the more you're building up that muscle of being present, right? And you just keep doing that for yourself, right? Meditation, journaling, breath work, going for a walk without any stimulus, without any phone, right? Little things like that, sitting outside and just taking in nature. These little things help you to develop that muscle of presence. It says anxiety often comes from trying to control what hasn't happened yet. Returning to the present helps you realize you're okay right now. Let me tell you, this resonates so deeply, right? So much of the anxiety that we experience comes from fixating and trying to control something that hasn't even happened yet. Being able to return to the present helps you to realize that right now, you're okay. Like, take a breath. Right now, you are okay. Yes, you might have a test coming up or an important event coming up or whatever it may be, and you could feel some anxiety, right? Maybe you have to have a tough conversation or you have, a tough thing coming up or whatever it may be. It could be anything that brings you anxiety. Take a deep breath and understand that in this moment right now, you are okay. You are okay. Right now, I am sitting outside on grass in front of a pond, camera out, computer, phone, water, coffee, synergy, sun's out, I'm good. Right now in this moment, I'm good. Yeah, I might have other things I got to tend to later and some things coming up that give me a little bit of anxiety. Let me just take a breath and understand that in this moment, I'm okay. And right now is all that I have. I don't have anything outside of this moment. I don't have my past and I don't have the future. All I have is this moment. And if I'm okay in this moment, then that means life is okay. And everything's going to be okay because this moment is okay. So take a breath. It's okay. It says the present moment is where your power lives. It's the only place anything ever truly happens. So here, let's do this equation. So if we understand that, right, if we know that your true power lies in the present moment, and on our journeys in society, we're constantly focused on everything outside of the present moment, what do you think that equation adds up to? Us feeling powerless, us feeling limited, us feeling unhappy, us feeling unfulfilled, right? Because all of the power and all the things that we're searching for are in this moment. But we've been conditioned and programmed to focus on everything outside of this moment, right? And that's why it's such a struggle to be present in this society. But let me tell you something, when you do it and you start to really go down that journey, you will realize how much power comes back in by you focusing on where your feet are, right? And that's where your power lies in this moment, right here. Like we said, going back to the first point of choosing how to respond, right? Choosing how to respond in this moment. That is an in the moment type of situation, right? Something happens, and now in this moment, we're going to take a breath and we're going to respond in a healthy and aligned way because that is where your power lies. The joy, it's in this moment. The happiness, it's in this moment. The peace, it's in this moment. The fulfillment, it is in this moment. Everything that you are searching for is in this moment with you, in you. So, with intention and awareness, we're going to start to be more mindful of that and do our best to live a more present life. Eckhart Tolle, realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have, right? When you really understand that and feel that in every fiber of your being and understand that, it's going to change the way you live. The present moment is truly all that you have. Like, the present moment is truly all that you have. Come on. The present moment is truly all that you have. A practice is you can use presence triggers. Every time you notice your thoughts spiraling or your body tensing up, take a conscious breath and feel your feet on the ground. Reconnect to now, right? Or use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, right? 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you could taste, right? It immediately brings you back into the present moment. Different practices to help you just ground yourself, right? So in the closing thought, it says, you don't need to control everything to feel powerful. You just need to stay rooted in what is yours, your thoughts, your energy, your choices, your breath. That's more than enough. Keep your hands on whatever is in your hands and let everything else fall where it will. Let everything else fall where it will, right? This really resonates with me because I'm moving. There's a lot of things going on in my head of how I'm going to transition, what it's going to be like going back home, all of these things, right? But all that I have control over is this moment and what I decided to do right now. And so if I just wake up every single day, focus on putting my best foot forward, being intentional, staying aligned with the highest version of myself, everything's going to take care of itself. Everything is going to take care of itself. It's going to be okay. It is going to be okay. Like, it really will. So I hope that episode gave you guys some insight. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really do appreciate and love each and every one of y'all. And I love that we're on this journey together, truly, being able to see, the transitions and the ebbs and flows and different seasons we go through together. It's a beautiful thing. And I can't express my gratitude enough for each and every one of y'all that tunes in and really supports the podcast. So thank you guys so much. And remember, most importantly, to take everything with a grain of salt. I will catch you guys next week. Deuces.